Speaking of roots, our next contestant is a guy who is so far underground you might think he was a spy. Although, come to think of it, he is a reputed member of the so-called Sunflower Mafia. I'm talking about Alan Bowsher from the Donovan Lab, and he'll be talking to us today about the roots of plant adaptation.
The future of crop production, the future of food production, is a huge concern, particularly in third world underdeveloped countries that are expected to have the greatest population increases. Ironically, it's these same countries that typically have the lowest fertility soil, the highest susceptibility to drought, and yet the least access to fertilizers. Luckily in the United States, fertilizer availability is not really considered a current issue, although our main source of phosphorus fertilizers, phosphate rock, is expected to be entirely depleted within our lifetimes. Clearly, in order to keep pace with growing populations, we're going to need to develop crops that can better tolerate low nutrient, low water, droughted conditions. The trouble is, the majority of our staple food crops today have been bred under high resource conditions for decades. And as a result, most of our food crops exhibit a sharp decline in yield in the absence of high fertilizer inputs. In order to develop crops that can better tolerate these low nutrient, dry conditions, we need to instead look to the wild relatives of these crops that can already adapt to those conditions. For example, we can look at the cultivated sunflower up here on the top left, which is grown in about 2 million acres in the United States alone. It's related to wild species such as this one here on the left, which is native to the drought-prone, salty habitats of the Atlantic coast. Or this species in the center here, which grows in the low-nutrient desert soils of the Great Basin Desert. The goal of my dissertation research is to understand how these wild sunflower species are able to acquire the water and the nutrients that they need in these extreme environments. In order to understand nutrient and water acquisition, we need to look at the roots, and that's what I do for my research. I study three main aspects of the root systems of these wild sunflower species. First, I study the fine roots, the thinnest portions of those root systems. The reason that's important is that the fine roots encompass the vast majority of nutrient uptake in plant root systems. I measure their size, shape, and production. Second, I study root system architecture, the actual three-dimensional deployment of roots in the soil. After all, nutrient uptake depends not only on the size and the shape of the fine roots, but also where the plant physically places them. Third and finally, all plant roots secrete various chemical compounds into the soil. Certain compounds secreted by plants have been shown to chemically interact with soil constituents, releasing nutrients that were previously unavailable to the plant. I study the composition and the specific nature of these compounds secreted by wild sunflower roots. It's my hope that studying these three main groups of traits, fine roots, root system architecture, and root secretions, that we can better understand how these wild sunflower species are adapted to those low-nutrient, tough environments. Plant breeders can then take this information and be better informed on how to develop sunflower cultivars that can be grown with less fertilizer requirement and less irrigation requirement. Hopefully, research in sunflower and the related and relatives of related crops can help us achieve this goal within our lifetimes. Thank you.